Every village has a stranger. The kind that's known as the black sheep or white crow, or any other words and associations that come to mind when those in the know choose to identify themselves as different from somebody they don't understand, the weird ones. And that's how every village gets a stranger. And our village is no different from the others. In our village, a girl is known to be the weird one. She was born here and spent all her life living in the same hut. She grew up chasing butterflies in the green grass in the summer and laughing with the summer wind. She tracked bear in the winter and watched them go to sleep after the last harvest of berries. She played in the river in the spring, breaking the melting ice as the first flowers gently poked so tenderly and yet with such strength through the frozen ground. In autumn, she helped her parents harvest. She loved the feeling of putting her hands deep within the soil, the moist, fertile ground. And as if from nowhere, suddenly, she would bring out a big yellow potato or radiant carrot. She loved all the seasons the same. And no matter how hard she tried to pick the most favorite one, she never could, for they all were so different and so exquisite at the same time. But there was one thing that she loved that was present in all of them, one that all seasons shared in common. And that is night. Nothing was more pleasing to her than watching the dawn arrive, the dusk, and in that liminal space, waiting for the arrival of the night. She'd run to the river and sit on the rock covered in the green moss that would tickle her bum. It would make her laugh. And after she was comfortable, she would lift her head up and look at the sky, waiting for her friends to arrive. And soon the darker it got, the more of them would appear, glistening and shimmering. Stars came aplenty, and soon after them a golden disk would appear, rolling in all its glory. A Mother Moon. That was your favorite time in the month. She'd sit on the rock and stretch her body as if trying to get a bit closer to the moon. And it seemed that the moon smiled back and became more radiant, sending her light. And the girl would close her eyes and feel the gentle touch of that light on her eyelashes, on her rosy cheeks, on the tip of your nose and chin, on her chest, and loose tangled hair on her bare feet and hands and knees and thighs. She'd inhale it with such thirst feeling how the light came in through your nostrils with the air and rushed through your whole body, running through your veins as if they were wild rivers, filling in your bones and lighting up your whole flesh. She'd sit on the rock, imagining all this and inhaling the moon in the presence of your friends, darkness and stars. And soon after, she'd feel like she herself became the moon. She was now radiating that light to everything around her, and it warmed her heart. For it seemed that now she too could bring some beauty into this world. Around the rock she sat at, to her village and the river and the bears and the berries. And she'd be so full of life that a song would jump out of her. And she would sing and sing and sing all night long to the stars, and enveloping darkness with the weaves of divine singing. She would sing to the moon and the grass, to the stone and the moss, to her body and her feet and the ground underneath her, to everything and everyone who was around her. And over time, her voice became so divine that it sounded as if angels themselves descended upon this land. And many villagers would hear that, and some would weep, others start praying, some would close the doors afraid, and others would just mutter, "Ugh, it's just the weird one again." But it mattered not to her. She was there on the rock with the moon and the stars and the moss and the river and a song. Bare feet, hair loose and tangled, a wild spirit within. And she came to be known as the Weird One, because you see, that was not a normal activity for a young girl to do in her village. She was supposed to go shopping, discuss her potential suitors, weave and make baskets, discuss what yields a better harvest, a pumpkin or a butternut squash, what kind of shoes to wear to the church, and where does a girl, a reputable girl, gets the best kind of pearls. But none of it interested her. And if at the beginning girls would involve her in conversations, soon they stopped, because she simply would walk away. The boys initially got really puzzled by this bare-feeted wild creature, and they tried to play with her, but she would always run away, for she was the fastest. She would always hide in the spots where nobody could find her, for she was the best at that too. Then they asked her to teach them, but she didn't know how. For her that was not a game, but life. It was like explaining breathing. It was her nature. It was just her way of being. And so the boys turned around and left her too, growing into a fine man and becoming the suitors to those other girls, and fine young women now. But our girl, she always ran to the rock by the river to meet the dark and the moon and the stars and the sing together. But one winter there was a great famine. That autumn not much harvest. Not much harvest has happened. And the famine descended on the lands, onto her village and villages nearby. And so one day, the elder of the village has heard that there was an attack coming, that others were coming to get their provisions, the last of what they had left. Some potatoes and wheat, the furs and candles. And they would spare nobody, for they didn't need spare mouths to feed. And he gathered everyone, calling in to all the strongest and the smartest and the fastest ones to gather all the weapons that they had and be ready to protect their village. And some came forward. Nobody came to seek our girl, for she was a weird one. And soon after that, the others arrived. They were angry. They've been fighting for a very long time, a couple of months now, so they were strong. Stronger than our villagers. There were many of them there. "Hey," said the leader of the others, "we come here to gather provisions, to call in the strong men and women to follow us, to go and gather more provisions from other villages. And we give you a choice. You either join us, those that are strong, and give us what we ask for, or we will slaughter you all." "I reassure you," said the elder of the village, "even if you slaughter us, that will be the only meat that you find here. For we too are starving. For we too need provisions, and my people are cold and hungry. And we try to make the most from what we have left to survive this winter, hoping that the next season, when spring comes, and when next autumn comes, we'll have more food. I ask for your mercy. Let us be and walk by." "Well, isn't it a stupid idea?" said the leader of the others. "You are asking a warrior to walk by. Was I not clear what it is I wished for? I tell you what, old man, you made me laugh. I have never heard such a ridiculous proposition, so I give you one. Instead of slaughtering you all, you give us your strongest and fastest warrior, and they will fight with the strongest and fastest of ours. And whoever wins gets their way. Deal?" An elder of the village turned around and looked at his people that stood there perplexed, worried but somewhat relieved, for hope came over them. They knew they stood no chance if the others were to attack them. "Well, maybe we should do this. Maybe what if we do what? Who shall we send? Who's the strongest?" So much whisper went around while they were trying to figure out what to do for them. And as they did that, they haven't noticed that the weird one came closer and moved forward and stepped in front of the others. "I shall fight on behalf of my people," she said, firmly, Laughter rocketed from the others. A bare feet, skinny girl, loose hair tangled, old clothes, feet covered in mud. She looked as if she didn't see food for years, not just months. How such a creature can fight, thought the leader of the others. I accept, he said. All the villagers rushed to her and started pulling her back. What are you doing? Are you crazy? We're all going to die because of you. Step back, weird one. Step back. Go back to your rock. But the girl was a mountain, unshakable. She didn't know why she was doing this, but she knew it was important and it was her role to take, her place. She moved a bit closer, and a tall man stood forward in front of her. He came out from the other's army. His thigh was as big as the girl herself. He was covered in battle scars and had red, angry eyes. He had a shield which was so huge that it blocked the sun, and a sword that's seen many heads fall and knew the taste of blood. But our girl didn't even blink. She stood in front of him and smiled. Let it begin! They heard the shout and the call to the battle, and the two of them started to move. The girl gently stepped back, stretched her arms and lifted her head to the sky and started to sing. So baffled her opponent was that he just stopped and listened. Angelic sounds were coming from her, so divine in nature that, as if bewitched, he couldn't stop listening to her. And the more she sang, the more drawn everyone got to her. And the more she sang, the darker it became, as if darkness itself was being summoned and invited in by the song. And soon after, the stars arrived, and the moon rolled in and rolled off the sky and went straight to the girl's feet and into her hand. And a star fell into her other hand. And there she stood, a warrior of the sky, with the moon for the shield and the star for a sword. And at the sight of this beauty, the heart of her opponent melted. He dropped his weapons and fell to his knees, touching the earth, and he burst out crying like a little boy. I don't want to fight, he said. I just want to eat. She smiled and lifted her moon shield, and the star soared higher, and as she did, they transformed and became a moon drum and a star beater. And she stroked the drum, and then again, and again and again. And it seemed as if all stars around them started to dance. And as the drum sang and the girl sang with it, the others and the villagers started to cry, touched by such beauty. And they wept and wept and wept for days and nights, dropping their tears into the land, watering it with hope. So much so that next season was the best harvest they ever had. So much of it that they shared it amongst other villages, including those where the others came from. And to celebrate that unity, they even created a harvest day where all gathered and exchanged seeds and insights on how to grow and look after land, and more importantly, recipes and food. And they all laughed and ate together and sung together, remembering the story of the weird one, the bare feet, hair tangled girl. The weird one with the moon drum and the star beater. Thank you.